When Miss That's breakfast is served early, Miss Bannies always asks for her oatmeal, thin but sweet. Whether it's Judge Judy, Gunsmoke, or reruns of the Golden Girls, those shows are more than entertainment. Or Miss T, who's known for her sass and sweet tea, always laughs out loud when the Andy Griffith Show plays, like she's hearing the jokes for the first time. That is why I take pride in being the guy who gets called when a light bulb is out or a remote one to sink. Because every fix, no matter how small, is part of that rule ensure safety, happiness, and prolongment of life. These aren't just pastimes. They're connections to better days. It's a community made of shared smiles, familiar routines, and everyday kindness. I noticed. And as you'll soon hear, I wasn't about to let it go. So when something disrupts that, like, say, the TV cutting out in half the units, you better believe I take it personally. Because every broken TV isn't just a technical issue. It's a disruption in someone's peace. It's frustration for someone who already has enough trouble in their life. And most of the time, they won't even complain. They'll just sit quietly and hope someone notices. Their companionship, their consistency, their little moments of happiness in a world that's getting harder to navigate. I've seen residents light up just hearing the familiar theme music of their favorite show. That's the reality of working in a senior facility. You celebrate little things because big things are too far gone. So when Miss Irma needs help lifting her walker over the curb, I help. When Mr. James's radio won't tune into his jazz station, I don't wait for an official work order. I just go. It's about making life better right now, today. For many, it's the best part of their day. Afterward, folks drift off into their routines. Some gather in the activity room for chair yoga or trivia. Others stay in, flipping through old photo albums or calling family. But most spend their time with the things that bring them simple joy, like the radio, a crossword, or their favorite TV shows. At our senior living center, you learn who likes what, who's cranky before coffee, and who's always ready with a story about how things used to be. You laugh, you cry, and yes, you grieve when rooms suddenly become quiet. But you keep going, because they count on you. Is an apartment-style community where the only requirement to move in is having lived long. Enough to have some gray in her hair and a story or two to tell. We're family-owned, and that energy flows through everything we do. You'll see employees helping out long after their shifts end. Grandkids of staff applying for part-time jobs, and birthday parties where everyone shows up even if they barely know the guest of honor. Tea, but truth be told, that barely scratches the surface. I fix sinks and run cable, sure. But I also carry groceries, change batteries in remote controls, and once spent an afternoon helping Miss Ruth alphabetize her crossword puzzle books. This isn't just a job. It's a calling. When you work here, especially in maintenance, you become a part of the residents' daily routines. You're not background noise. You're their lifeline to comfort, safety, and peace of mind. Told me her TV hadn't worked in 60 days, and the cable company offered her a measly $21 refund. I snapped. These were seniors, our nation's wisdom keepers, getting robbed and ignored. I made a promise that day. I would fix this mess once and for all. What followed was a year-long battle against corporate greed, tech indifference, and disrespect. But in the end, over 200 residents now have free television for life. No more bills, no more static, no more apologies. And that rude representative? Let's just say, I hope she likes the taste of her own dish. Imagine a place that feels more like a big family than a facility. My official title is Maintenance Director. There's one rule in our employee handbook. Just one. It says, ensure resident safety, happiness, and prolongment of life. That's it. That's the job, and we take it to heart every single day. Because here, the residents aren't just names on a clipboard. They're mentors, veterans, teachers, parents, survivors. They're people who've built businesses, raised families, and fought wars. People who've earned the right to spend their final years in peace, surrounded by care and respect. Day-to-day life here is a slow, steady rhythm of comfort. And let me tell you, TV is a big deal here. Like Mr. Harold, he's a retired trucker who doesn't say much, but you better not interrupt him when Matlock is on. That's why it matters so much to me. The truth is, a lot of our residents won't be here 5 years from now. Some maybe not even 5 months. And over time, you build relationships. This place isn't perfect, but it's special. Well, it started off small, just one work order. Miss Evelyn said her television kept showing a no-signal screen. At first, I thought it was something simple. A loose cable. Maybe a setting got changed by mistake. I headed over with a smile and a screwdriver, expecting to be in and out in 5 minutes. All with the same issue. No signal, no explanation. I checked everything: power cords, HDMI connections, reset buttons. I even swapped out remotes and ran diagnostic tests. They sent a technician who arrived, poked around for a bit, then said everything looked fine. The TVs started working again for a couple of hours. Then the next day, the same residents would call me again. Same problem. Same frustration. I had a stash of them in my office, cheap rabbit ear style devices that pulled a handful of channels from the airwaves. One resident told me, "It feels like the world is leaving me behind, one channel at a time." That hit me hard. It wasn't just a tech issue. It was emotional. And it was affecting their quality of life. Not much, but better than silence. Still, there were no replacement for the satellite service these residents were paying for. I begged, and every time, the answer was the same. We need the account holder to call us directly. That was their script, and they stuck to it like it was gospel. Even when I did manage to convince them to send a technician, the residents were growing weary. Some were angry. Others were just sad. I remember one day walking into Miss Irma's unit. She was sitting in her recliner, TV off, staring at the wall. "What's the point?" she said quietly. "They're never going to fix it." I sat with her for a while, just listening. "I'm going to take every dish on this property and toss it in the dumpster, not out of anger, out of resolve." That was the moment I decided I'd had enough. It was time to fix this for real. Then I'm going to make sure no one here ever has to deal with your company again. She wasn't just missing her shows. She was missing the part of her day that gave her joy, routine, something to look forward to. It broke my heart. The fix never lasted. "Just take the TV," she told me one afternoon. "It's just a big black box now." I tried to convince her to keep it. I asked how much. "Excuse me?" The rep replied with no emotion. I said, "You're telling me she pays over $40 a month, has no service for 60 days, and all she gets is $21? $21.16. Promised I was still working on a solution. But the hope was draining out of them, one resident at a time. They'd come out, adjust something. Sharp as a tack, I documented everything: dates, times, every failed fix. I called the company again, told them I wanted a refund or discount for Miss T. After bouncing between departments for nearly an hour, I finally got someone in billing. I laid it out calmly. "This woman hasn't had service for 2 months. You owe her more than just an apology." Never shy about speaking her mind. When her service went out, she called me 3 times a week, every week, for 2 months. I kept her going with an air antenna, but she wanted her full service back, and she deserved it. She was paying for it. Reset a box, and sure enough, within hours, the signal would cut out again. Rinse and repeat. I started to feel like I was in a bad sitcom, trapped in a loop with no way out. Never mind that some of these residents could barely hear the phone ring, let alone navigate a call center maze designed to wear people down. Never mind that most didn't know their 4-digit access codes, or the answer to whatever secret question they had set years ago. And never mind that I was the one on site, doing all the troubleshooting, dealing with all the fallout. If there was something wrong with the equipment, it wasn't anything I could see, but everything was plugged in. The dish outside was untouched. I even checked for obstructions, no tree branches, no fallen leaves blocking the signal. I wasn't just fixing problems, I was managing a crisis. Every week brought new complaints, new outages, and the same old phone calls to the satellite company. I'm just trying to get someone out here to fix the issue. The answer was always some version of no. One rep even told me, "We're not allowed to talk to you unless you're on the account." I asked her what she'd suggest, then have a 93-year-old man with hearing aids call and yell into the receiver until someone takes pity? She didn't laugh. She didn't care. At first, I thought I could reason with them, explain the situation, get them to see that this wasn't just some random technical hiccup. It was affecting dozens of elderly residents who depended on their TVs for comfort, routine, and connection. The setup was perfectly normal, but the screen stayed blank. And each time I did what I could: reboot the system, double-check the signal path, reroute coax where possible. But it always ended the same: temporary fix, no real solution. I figured it might just be a bad weather day, or maybe a glitch in the receiver box. Still, to make sure she wasn't left without her soap operas, I installed a temporary air antenna. This cycle never stopped. Each time I called the company, they'd say, "Have the resident call us directly." That might sound reasonable to someone who's never worked with seniors. But these weren't two folks who could just hop on a customer service line and navigate a maze of automated menus, security questions, and account numbers. Most didn't even remember their 4-digit access code, let alone the answer to some secret question they set 5 years ago. It wasn't great, but it gave her a few local channels, and that was better than nothing. A few days later, another call came in. This time, Mr. Darnell in Unit 108, then Miss Ruth in 116, then Mr. Carl across the hall. What started as a trickle turned into a flood. Within a couple weeks, I had a dozen residents reporting the same issue. I contacted the service provider and explained what was happening. And the worst part? I kept installing air antennas as a short-term fix. They were growing more and more upset, not just because their shows were gone, but because of the helplessness they felt. No one was listening to them. And if I didn't step up, no one ever would. Over the next year, my job started to feel less like maintenance and more like damage control. I called. I emailed. I filled out online support tickets. It didn't matter how many times I explained it. I'm the maintenance director. I have permission to act on their behalf. The worst part was, meanwhile, Miss Ruth stopped trying altogether. Then came Miss T. Miss T was one of our more spirited residents. Her signal was out for 60 days. They said they'd apply a credit. I paused. That's the prorated amount. That's not even half of 1 month's bill. That's our policy. That was it. That was the breaking point. I told her, with a calm I didn't feel, "You know what? Keep your refund." I hung up. My hands were shaking. Miss T was the kind of woman who made the whole building feel warmer just by walking down the hall. Everyone knew our residents, staff, even the delivery guys. She had this infectious laugh, like wind chimes on a breezy afternoon, and always wore these bright floral house dresses that matched her personality perfectly. She baked muffins for the staff every other Sunday, handed out advice like candy, and could still hustle anyone in a game of dominoes. She was 84 and had more life in her pinky finger than most people half her age. So when Miss T's television went out, she didn't just shrug it off. She called me right away, like she always did. "Sweetheart, the screen's black again," she said. "You know, I can't miss my court shows." Told her Miss T had no service for 60 days. No tech could fix it. We had documentation, photos, timestamps. I need you to credit her accordingly, I said. I'm going to take every dish your company installed on this property, every one, and I'm going to throw them in the dumpster. Then I'm going to make sure no resident here ever gives your company another dime. They didn't just mess with Miss T, they messed with all of us. And I was going to make it right, even if I had to do it myself. I came down, antenna in hand, but the satellite service was completely dead. The total refund comes to $21.16. Then I asked her to repeat it, just to be sure I heard right. I didn't bother sugarcoating anything. I laid it all out on the table. Then he leaned back in his chair, gave me a serious look, and said the words I'd been hoping to hear for a long time. The ongoing outages, the endless tech visits, the absurd demands to have residents call in. Each unit had its own separate satellite hookup, its own individual dish, its own tangle of wires that had been run carelessly through gutters, downspouts, even across sidewalks. It was a mess. If I wanted this new system to work, I'd have to reroute, replace, and standardize every single cable. On weekends, I brought in a couple of part-time techs and a few volunteers from the staff kids who had grown up around the residents and wanted to help. We pulled wires through attics and crawl spaces. We drilled holes, installed wall plates, sealed up gaps, and labeled everything meticulously. That meant running brand new coax lines to every unit by hand. I came home every night covered in insulation dust, my arms scratched up from tight corners and fiberglass. She clapped her hands together and said, "Well, it's about damn time." Then she smiled. A big one. The kind I hadn't seen in weeks. I created a spreadsheet with every unit, every resident, their viewing preferences, and their existing setup. And best of all, not one satellite dish remained on the property. I ripped them all down, loaded them into a dumpster, and smiled like a man who just won a long, brutal war. I personally supervised each install, making sure the boxes were programmed, the remotes worked, and that the picture was clear. I probably crawled more feet on my stomach than a Marine in basic training. I didn't just fix the cables. I restored something deeper: comfort, routine, and dignity. That was my mission all along. There were setbacks, broken drill bits, warped conduits, weather delays, but we kept pushing forward. And the final straw: Miss T being insulted with a $21 refund after 2 months without service. You could hear laughter and theme songs drifting out into the hallways again. Residents who had gone quiet were now asking me which channels carried their old favorites. Some hadn't had TV in months. Now they had hundreds of channels at their fingertips, crystal clear, reliable, and completely free. She did. This woman has been without service for 2 months. She's 84. She relies on this television more than you could possibly understand. And you're going to insult us with a $21 refund? Over the next 2 months, we went through the same cycle, me fixing what I could, and her trying to stay patient. I wasn't just going to slap another antenna on a window or wait around for another unqualified technician to show up and scratch their head. Ditch the dishes, cancel the contracts, and move to a landline-based TV provider that didn't rely on signal strength or weather conditions to function. If the satellite company wouldn't take care of our residents, I'd make sure they never had to deal with that company again. She never once raised her voice. Not even after 30 days. Not even after 45. But when we hit day 60, she started to lose that sparkle. I'd walk in, and she'd just sit there, quiet. No music, no chatter, just silence. That wasn't her, and it made me furious. This wasn't just about missing TV anymore. It was about someone stealing her joy and thinking $21 was enough to say sorry. So I made the call. When I got the billing rep on the line, I laid everything out. The rep clicked a few keys, then said, in the most robotic tone imaginable, I was quiet for a second. I took a deep breath. "Let me explain something to you," I said. trying not to shout. The rep didn't respond. "That's fine," I said, voice hard now. "You know what I'm going to do?" And I meant every word. That call ended with me shaking not out of rage, but out of purpose. Something had snapped inside me. After I hung up the phone with that customer service rep, I marched straight into the office of our facility's owner. He didn't say much at first, just nodded, listening quietly. Do what needs to be done? Fix it for good. That was all the permission I needed. I walked out of that office with a fire lit under me. The plan was simple in theory. Bypass satellite entirely. But switching providers was the easy part. The real work came in the form of infrastructure. Our building wasn't designed for centralized coaxial distribution. So that's exactly what I did. I started at 6 a.m. every day and finished long, after the sun went down. It wasn't glamorous work. We coordinated with the new provider to schedule box installations once the wiring was in place. I didn't want any downtime. My goal was seamless transition. Miss T was the first to get connected. I stood beside her as her screen came to life, full color, full volume. Law and Order was on. Unit by unit, the building came back to life. In total, we rewired over 200 units. Every single resident now had TV service included in their rent, no extra fees, no surprise bills, no having to call some faceless corporation that doesn't even know their name. Because that's what it felt like, a war. Not with tools or fists, but with persistence, care, and a refusal to let anyone treat our seniors like they were disposable. And we weren't just back to normal, we were better than ever. The day the new system went live felt like the grand finale of a redemption arc. I'll never forget it. 6 o'clock a.m., crisp air, the smell of fresh mulch from the landscaping crew, and not a satellite dish in sight. One push of the button, one command through their backend, and all 200-plus units would come online at once. I stood in the main hallway, with a walkie in one hand, a fresh coffee in the other, and my heart beating like a drum roll. The sky was wide open, no cables slithering through the courtyards, no wires dangling from gutters. It was clean, ready, and so was I. We'd scheduled the provider to activate service across the board that morning. It was time. I gave the nod over the radio. Go ahead and light it up. A minute later, like magic, it started. Smiles everywhere, doors open, neighbors shouting updates down the hallway. She was in her recliner, a cup of hot tea in hand, her legs wrapped in that pink fuzzy blanket she always used when she was feeling cozy. On her TV, The Andy Griffith Show, she wasn't crying, but her lip was trembling, and her voice cracked when she said, "You really did it, sweetheart." The theme from Wheel of Fortune echoed from 2 different directions. No more confusing contracts, no more monthly charges they barely understood, no more waiting on hold with strangers who didn't care. It was all taken care of, built into their home, like water or heat. I passed by a cluster of residents watching Bonanza in the lounge, each of them wide-eyed, as if they were witnessing something sacred. People were clapping, swaying in their chairs. The cooks came out from the kitchen to peek in and see what the fuss was about. No eyesore dishes on roofs or poles jammed into flower beds. No more tripping hazards from cables snaking across sidewalks. The mess that had once defined our TV setup was gone. Over 200 residents, many on fixed incomes, saved $40, $50, even $60 a month. For some, that meant more grocery money. For others, it meant peace of mind. It was a clear message to every single resident. We see you. You matter. And you deserve better than what they gave you. The exterior of the property looked as cared for as the people inside it. The hallways felt lighter, like the weight of frustration had lifted. Mr. Carl, who'd gone almost completely silent since his TV went out, was now making jokes about how young the weatherman looked. I personally made sure every piece of their equipment was taken off our property. For a year, they ignored us, brushed us off, acted like their grip on our facility was unshakable. Now their influence was reduced to garbage bags on the curb, ready for the next trash pickup. We filled an entire dumpster with cables, mounts, splitters, and boxes that once caused nothing but headaches. The owner backed me up fully, and we've formalized it in our vendor policy. We don't work with companies that ignore, exploit, or disrespect our residents. She was tucked into her chair, her tea steaming beside her. When she saw me, she didn't say anything right away. She just smiled, a kind of smile that says thank you, finally, and I knew you'd come through all at once. It was like exorcising bad energy from the building. Every time I carried another bundle of unused coax or an old receiver out to the trash, I smiled a little wider. Miss Irma, who used to sit in quiet loneliness, now hosted a TV tea time in her apartment with 3 other ladies gathered to watch Little House on the Prairie and sip Lipton, because I remember every second, and it was glorious. That's what this was. The satellite company didn't just lose one customer. Like a storm had passed, and the sun was finally shining again. They lost over 200. In one swift final move, we cut ties with them forever. It was pure, unfiltered joy. Unit 104. Hey, my TV's working. Unit 211. Oh my Lord, look at that picture. We didn't just cut cords, we cut out the nonsense, the greed, the neglect. Unit 118, laughter Miss Evelyn, crying and pointing at the screen. I haven't seen the news in 3 weeks. Within 5 minutes, the entire building was buzzing. You could feel it. I stopped in on Miss T, of course. Had to. That moment? Worth every call, every scratch, every foot of coax I had to crawl through. In the dining hall, someone had cranked up the volume on the big screen to a local gospel channel, and not a single resident was being billed for it. TV was now part of the rent. And the effect on the building? Immediate. People who had stopped coming out of their apartments started showing up for meals again. The residents had something to talk about again, something to look forward to. And the facility itself finally looked like it should. Clean lines, the best part? It didn't cost them a single penny more. We absorbed the service into operations, streamlined the budget, and made it work without raising rent by a single dollar. For me, it meant I could finally exhale, because this wasn't just a technical upgrade. It was a restoration of dignity. And to the company that thought they could dismiss Miss T with a $21 refund, I hope they remember this day as clearly as I do. There is a certain kind of revenge that doesn't need fireworks or headlines. It is quiet, calculated, and permanent. Their dishes? Gone. Their receivers? Removed, boxed up, and tossed into bins like expired leftovers. They didn't see it coming. They'll never get another contract from us again. Not while I'm still breathing. I've already made sure of that. And to think all of this happened because one representative didn't think Miss T deserved better than a $1.21 refund. Miss T, the heartbeat of our story. I still remember the moment I walked back into her unit after everything went live. Her TV was glowing. Perry Mason was playing. She patted the armrest beside her, and I sat down. We watched half an episode in silence. It wasn't awkward. It was peaceful. This wasn't about cable. It was about care. It was about showing our elders that someone still fights for them when the world tries to make them feel forgotten. And in its place, connection, joy, and a whole lot of reruns. To some people, this whole thing might sound like overkill. A battle over television? Really? But if you've ever worked with senior citizens, really worked with them, sat with them, seen their daily lives, you understand. For many of our residents, entertainment isn't just a pastime. It's companionship. It's the only voice they hear on quiet afternoons, the only face they recognize when family can't visit. Everything else feels a little colder, a little lonelier. The spark returned. People who had shut their doors opened them again. Friends who had stopped chatting in the halls now had things to talk about. Even our staff felt it, like we were all breathing easier. That simple, reliable access to entertainment had brought back more than just noise. It brought back life. That's what was happening in our facility. Quiet TVs led to quiet halls. Conversations dried up. Smiles faded. One small inconvenience turned into a big emotional weight for people already dealing with the challenges of aging. We put them in the back, make them wait, speak over them, treat them like relics of the past. But they're not. They are the keepers of wisdom, the anchors of families, the people who built the world we live in today. It's a routine that brings order and joy that reminds them life is still worth smiling about. It's laughter echoing down a hallway. It's Miss T smiling as the intro to her favorite show plays. This wasn't just about wires and screens. It was about doing right by people who've lived long lives and deserve peace. So to the rep who brushed her off, this one's for you. And to my residents, may your favorite shows never cut out again. Hit that like button if you believe our elders deserve the best. Subscribe for more real stories of doing the right thing. TV isn't just background noise. Here, it's connection. It's therapy. It's sanity. Every wire I pulled, every channel I restored, was a quiet promise to our residents. You are not forgotten. And when that connection gets taken away, but giving our seniors back something that makes them feel autonomous, that reminds them they still have choices and comfort, that's a gift of dignity. So when we fixed it, really fixed it, the difference was instant. And that's why it matters. It's showing up every single time until your people don't have to beg for what should have been theirs all along. It was disrespectful. It was lazy. It was a system built to frustrate and ignore the most vulnerable members of society. And I wasn't about to let that slide. Because when you're old, the world already strips so much away: mobility, independence, sometimes even memory. Dignity isn't a slogan. It's an action. It's running cable in the heat for hours. It's fighting with a customer service rep who doesn't give a damn. And let's be clear, what that satellite company did wasn't just bad customer service. We live in a world that too often shrugs its shoulders at the elderly. They deserve better. And if they can't fight for it themselves, then we damn well better step up and fight for them. Because respect isn't handed out. It's earned. Through sweat, patience, and showing people through your actions that they matter. Revenge doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's quiet. It's 200 TVs switching on at the same time.